Columbia. Hello, Orangeburg. You're listening to the point. Excuse me. This is the principal. We're back from last week. Did you miss us? We actually have a new rule, I think, Corey, about the calls. We want to. Our phone number is 803-799-TALK, 803-799-8255. If you want to call into the show, you don't have to talk about the topics we're talking about. If you'd like to bring up something to discuss, feel free to call in with any topic you'd like. Is that what we're going with, guys?
That's what we're going with.
Okay, and we have some interesting topics to start off with. We're going to talk about the social contract, and when people say, if you don't like it, you can leave.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the social contract first.
Okay.
So I think we got to lay some groundwork on what is a social contract for anyone who's not familiar with that.
So what is it?
So basically, social contract is this whole idea that people have come up with that in order to live in a society where you coexist with other people, there's this contract that you must abide by, and you have to give up some freedom in order to coexist with people and get along and whatever. And they refer to it as the social contract. Does that make sense? Am I leaving anything out here?
I'm with you.
Basically, you hear it as an argument over and over and over again for when you say, well, I don't think things should be that way. And then someone says, well, that's just a part of living in a society among other people. It's part of the social contract, right?
It's a sacrifice that you have to make.
You've got to make sacrifices, right?
Well, I think there's a difference in an obligation to your community and an imaginary contract where anybody can enforce any kind of rules on you. That's a totally.
But they would argue that they would argue it a different way. I was trying to explain it from how the people who support it.
Right.
I was trying to be.
They probably look at it as a community.
Yeah, it's just part of a community thing. Got to get along, right? And I think that leads to we have to discuss what is a contract. What constitutes a contract.
Okay.
Right. And yeah, the many of the problems in society is because everything's looked as a collective now, and they're getting around away from actual. We're individuals, and only thing that we have are actual contracts or our actual word. Whereas, if it's verbal or written or whatever kind of contract you have, I mean, that's the only thing you're obligated to. I mean, you can't just impose things on other people and say they owe you something.
Well, what would you say a contract is? How would you describe a contract?
A contract is the meeting of the minds of
an agreement.
An agreement, but both have to come to a meeting of the minds.
All parties have to. You could have a verbal contract. You could have a written contract.
Sure.
So, in essence, a contract requires consent. It requires agreement.
Right.
It requires active agreement.
It requires knowledge that there is a contract.
Right. So the idea that there is such a thing as a social contract is false. I mean, I don't know how to say it other than it's just a false idea. It's not. There is no contract.
I think it's a socialist tool. I mean,
it is. It's absolutely. It's a manipulation tactic to make people think. Well, I do have to. That's just part of being in a society, is giving up certain things. I should be surveilled 24/7 every time I walk down the street because this is how we have a fair society where people get along. It's part of the social contract. But when you get to the root of it, there is no contract. I didn't sign anything. I didn't agree to anything. I didn't verbally agree. I didn't passively agree. I was just born here, thrust into this situation. Not by my own choosing. I didn't have any say in that.
I think by calling it a social contract, it implies that you did agree to it.
That's the point.
They say that you agreed to it just by living in this society.
Just by being here.
You are agreeing to whatever terms of this so-called social contract are.
And understand that it is saying that because you were birthed within the confines of some invisible lines that someone else long before you claimed existed.
Claimed they owned.
Claimed they have dominion over. Therefore, you have implicitly agreed to this contract that doesn't exist, that you never agreed to.
So do you think that people agree to this contract when they're born, or does it start at conception, or?
Maybe after the first trimester.
When you're making stuff up, you can make it up to whatever kind of
Right.
fantasy you want, I assume.
The social contract only comes into effect after you have survived the first trimester.
Right.
That's the whole point of the conversation, is that's a common statist argument. Well, this is just part of the social contract. This you have to give up this freedom, or you have to give up this right, or you have to give up because that's just what it takes to live among people.
Well, the basic principle in society in law is that you make laws based on ownership. I mean, it's what gives you the right to make a law. That's how you can say what happens in your house or on your property is that you own that property, or that you own a gun, or you own whatever your property is. You're the one that has sole possession. You have sole control and sole dominion over it. So you get to make the rules. So by them saying you're obliged to society, they're saying that the state owns you.
Well,
and that's what people don't understand, is that the state is controlling you, that they're just claiming that they own you, and that's how they can take your property and make rules over your property, because you don't actually own it. They own everything you have because they own you.
The American Revolution obfuscated that concept to a degree, because colonial days, it was all understood that the king owned the colonies. The king decided if you wanted to form a company, a corporation, to come over and populate and set up a colony, you had to petition the king, because it was the king's land here. And then the American Revolution came along, and they got it partially right and said, well, we own ourselves. It's the castle doctrine. But we need a government to make sure that you own yourself.
Right.
So they obfuscated the whole concept, and people bought into it, and they still do.
It was a clever trick.
It was a very clever trick.
After the Declaration of Independence, it all kind of went downhill.
Right. We need a central bank, because that's the only way you can be prosperous. It basically, they took something that was obvious, king ownership of the property, and shifted it. Well, you own it. We just tell you what to do.
Right.
And that doesn't
make any sense.
No, it makes absolute
ownership is what makes the rules.
You own it. You just have to pay us for it.
Right. And then the social contract concept was put in place in order to brainwash people. I hate that word because it's loaded. It's a loaded term, but in order to propagandize people into accepting the idea that somebody has to tell you what to do.
Mm-hmm. It also goes back to the they own you, but then they reverse that to make you sound like you are the government.
Right. The government is us.
Right.
The government is you.
Right.
So the Jews put themselves in the ovens.
Right.
Is what that comes down to.
All that kind of word salad. It's just
it's a ridiculous a man on death row who's executes himself.
Yeah, basically.
It's a suicide. It's not an execution. It's a suicide, because we are the government. Mm-hmm. That's logically that's the way that applies, and so there is no real logic behind it, and that's the whole idea. The social contract is meant to manipulate people into accepting someone else's orders with their own property, with their own rights.
And people are subject to wanting to go along and feel like they're included. So,
all right, guys, you're listening to The Principle on 95.9 FM, 1470 AM. We'll be right back after this break.
Working harder.
And we're back. All right, guys. Is my microphone popping? It sounds like it is. Anyway, you're listening to The Principle on 95.9 FM, 1470 AM, 1490 AM Orangeburg. If you're listening on the TuneIn app or on the web at MakeThePointRadio.com, thanks for tuning in. If you want to give us a call and join the discussion, the number is 803-799-8255. That's 799-TALK. And you don't even have to talk about what we're talking about. You can just call in and throw anything at us, and we'll...
It's a free-for-all.
It's a free country.
It's a phone free-for-all.
Sunday, every Sunday.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about the social contract, and It's an argument that people use as to why you should obey whatever law is handed down from the king, and as if every single little bit of law and legislation in this country is somehow for the betterment of society. It's just the price you have to pay for living in a civilized culture. So where do we leave off on that, Corey?
Well, I think it's worth repeating. I know the audience for radio shows are typically, they listen for short spans of time, so it doesn't hurt us to reiterate it. The whole idea is to manipulate people into giving up their rights and conceding power to others to have dominion over you. And the argument is that, well, that's just what civilized people do, which is a ridiculous concept to me, because it's the antithesis of civilized to accept threat of violence over people.
That's a good point. It's kind of ironic because all these laws, the way they're enforced is with the police.
Through the barrel of a gun.
Right, and to get you to comply or to bring you to, quote, justice, they're going to use harm against you. They're going to
at least threaten.
You. Right. At the very least, you're... Well, I've heard it put very well that the state, it sort of sits upon and operates on the ever-present threat of violence.
That's all it is.
Because even if a cop doesn't verbally threaten you, you know that there will be some harm to your body if you don't comply.
Or at least an abduction. Mm-hmm. They will kidnap you and put you in a cage.
There will be aggression, right?
Yeah, there will be some form of aggression. Mm-hmm. People see what happens is we've been so conditioned as a society to just obey that it takes the.
It hurts when you disobey.
Well, and it makes the gun in the room less obvious, because instead of saying, "Wait a minute, taxation is theft. I'm not going to pay my tax bill." I don't even like to call it a bill. I'm not going to pay my extortion fees, and then have someone show up at your door eventually, because you just continually refuse. Someone eventually will show up at your door with guns, and they will abduct you, or if you defend yourself, they will kill you. Mm-hmm. Well, people don't do that anymore. They've been so conditioned because of the social contract or whatever the reason is. They've been so conditioned to just obey. Where you don't see the gun in the room anymore.
I saw an article, I think it was on like Salon.com or Jezebel or one of those just kind of news sites, but it was called Why Everyone Should Love Paying Taxes. And it was about the social contract, about how, it
helps everyone out.
Right. You should not only deal with it, you should actually enjoy it. You should enjoy the robbery.
Because so many people benefit from it.
Right.
But so here's the thing about that. Who gets to decide who benefits, and who gets to decide what
you do?
Cost
we do. Yeah, it's our government.
Right. Yeah, forgot about that.
Because that's why Obama now wants to forward everybody voting, because you are part of it. So you have to make sure you have to put your thumbprint on that.
I think that the politicians know we're past the tipping point where
I think in the last election, something like 33% of people voted. Like the majority of Americans the vast majority didn't vote.
Well, so, because they inherently understand that they can't affect the system.
Yeah.
They can't change it. I mean, that they can't.
Well, if nobody votes, then isn't that the majority? If the majority of people don't vote, isn't that kind of saying that
that's the majority saying they don't want any?
Well, that's
right.
And that's what they're afraid of. That's why he wants to push for that, is to, if you force everybody to vote and you have consequences,
you can claim consent.
Right.
If everyone's forced to vote, then you can claim majority consent. Well, but when you have a situation where 70% of the people aren't even making a statement,
it's like the last thing
won last election.
Right? Yeah. Well, yeah.
He was
overwhelming.
Hugo Chavez has won. How many times has Hugo Chavez won?
He's they're just really good politicians.
That's it. That's all it is.
It's
the Shah of Iran. Hadn't he won election every single time?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It must be that the people really want that.
I'd love to see what their ballots look like.
Just check one box.
Yeah,
I mean that's so. It's an insane concept to say that you should be happy with paying taxes because that's part of living in a civilized society. That's part of the social contract, is to be extorted from.
And ironically, it's just the opposite. It's uncivil to
It's
force
completely
people to do
uncivilized.
things against their will. So the only way to get it back to civility is to have people to represent their own selves and to of course make their own contracts.
The most, because at the end of the day, when you vote for someone, all you're doing is voting for someone who's gonna use the police to force your ideas on someone else.
That's it.
And vice versa. If your candidate loses, somebody else's ideas will be forced onto you.
And how is that civilized?
It's not civilized. It's actually pretty barbaric that we still operate on that kind of system. So the most peaceful thing you can do, in my opinion, and I'm sure you guys agree, is just to not participate.
Right.
And now they're taking that away.
They want to.
They want to take that away. So now you're being forced to participate. You can say, at least you have some footing to even somebody who agrees with everything the government does. You can say, listen, I just don't participate. Why should I be subject to all this? But then if this were to happen, the mandatory voting, you wouldn't even be able to do that. They would take away your right to not participate.
Some countries fine you for not voting, and some of them
and if you don't pay the fine, they're going to come to your house. They're going to serve you whatever. If you don't pay that, they're going to come into
heavily socialist countries, and they're saying that you can't work for the state if you don't vote. So they're blackmailing you into saying you can't have a job if you don't vote. So it's just a downhill.
But that's civilized. That's part of the social contract.
Well,
it's that's just one of those things you have to do in order to live in a civilized society. You have to do whatever you're forced at gunpoint to do in order to live in a civilized society. That's what's insane to me. When you start to get rid of the noise, the propaganda, and really get to the root of a lot of things that go on in society today, I really look around and I feel as though it's so Orwellian. It's down is up is down, war is peace, ignorance is strength. It's truly and literally that way. Oh, and it's frightening. Not frightening isn't the right word. It's alarming, because so many people buy into all of it, and it's your civic duty to vote. If you don't vote, you can't complain. No. See, I don't vote because I don't want any of this. Mm-hmm. I don't want it. I don't like it. I don't want it. The end. That I'm making a statement. Oh no! You've got to choose one of these two people that has been chosen for you to choose from, or else you can't complain.
Well, it's like you saying, no matter what you do, if you vote for a politician, you're voting for somebody to legislate rules that take away somebody else's freedom. So on a moral principle, is the way I look at it. I don't have the right to take somebody else's freedom away from them, and I have no right to tell other people or to customize my society the way I want it and take away freedoms from you.
You really don't have any jurisdiction outside of your own house.
Outside your own property.
Outside of your own property,
and your body. I mean,
you do. You can. You can. You can have jurisdiction outside of your own property through private agreement.
Oh yeah, I mean, without a contract,
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could have you could be a part of your HOA. Mm-hmm. I don't typically like HOAs, but they're
voluntary.
They're quasi. They exist because the deed that the state puts in place.
Like it, you can leave.
Right. Yeah. That's a whole. Yeah, we're gonna get into that later. But it's the deed that the state issues has riders on the deed that allow for the perpetuation of them. You can't opt out of them. To me, anything that I can't opt out of is not voluntary.
To anyone who doesn't understand the acronym, and we do use it a lot, I think, as a sort of a proxy. An HOA is a homeowners agreement. They're the kind of
homeowners association.
The homeowners association, the type of things you agree to that tell you what color the rocks in your yard could be and things like that. Right.
So everybody says, well, if you don't like it, you don't have to move in that neighborhood. Well, to me, that's not a voluntary thing, but that's a whole other tangent. It's still kind of it's still a quasi. To me, I call it a quasi-private agreement that has an effect on property other than yours. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to voluntarily, like if you lived in a community that didn't have an HOA and you got the community together and you wanted to put one in place, then that would be a voluntary private agreement that you would have an effect on what your property owners around you do more than just your property. So the point is that you can have effect on property more than yours through a voluntary private agreement. But the state is not a voluntary private agreement.
It's funny how every time people get together and agree on things, somebody loses some freedom. You know what I mean?
But that's the price you pay for living.
It seems like democracy is just the first step in limiting some sort of liberty you have.
Well, democracy or even a republic. Conservatives like to tout, but we live in a republic. Yeah, but it still takes away my rights.
It's the same thing.
It's not.
Really.
It's well. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, we could go down that rabbit hole a long way.
What is it? A democratic republic? Would that be how to say it?
Yeah, I've heard people say that. It's
China
a state.
is a republic too. So is Russia.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Isn't it Venezuela? Isn't Venezuela a republic?
I think so.
And North Korea is a republic, and Iran is a republic.
Okay.
And it doesn't. Ultimately, it's just semantics.
If you can keep it.
Right. If you can keep, you have a republic, sir. If you can keep it. Anyway.
Well, we're going into break, guys. Again, if you want to call in and join the conversation, the number is 803-799-8255. We can get you on the line over the break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we're back. You're listening to The Principle. I think I surprised Corey. You're listening to 95.9 FM, 1470 AM. My microphone is still popping a little bit. Drew, can we... We'll get on that. Chris is... Corey is...
There, I'm on.
There we go. Okay, cool.
You have to back off of your microphone a little bit.
Yeah,
you're not supposed to put it in your mouth.
Right. Okay, I got you. Thank you. The number, guys, if you want to call in, is 803-799-8255. That's 799-TALK. Chris just joined us again.
And it's a free-for-all on the phone, so any topic you want to discuss.
We're feeling lonely, guys. Where's David? Where's what was the guy's name who called in about
Dieter.
Where's Dieter?
Dieter.
We're talking about the social contract.
He's updating his signature on the social contract.
His John Hancock is a real big, right?
He wants everybody to know for sure he signed his social contract. So here's a question. Can you be subject to a contract that doesn't exist and you never agreed to?
Yes, but should you? You can be forced into it, obviously.
But is it a contract then?
No.
It's not. It's just a threat. I mean, it's just it's do it or else. It's not. That's not a contract.
Obey.
Best way I explain it to people is like, say you went on vacation for a couple weeks, and while you were gone, a guy down the street decided to mow your yard 3 times while you were gone, and when you came back, he said you owed him $100. So I never had. So, well, your yard needed mowed, so I mowed it, so you owe me $100. That's, you live in this community, and I mowed it for you.
That's part of living in a civilized community, is having...
But people can see that's not a legitimate argument. That is not, because you only are responsible for an actual contract that you participate in.
That is a good analogy.
You can't just make things up, force them on people, and say that they exist.
Why do you think that people see the state as unique in that aspect? I personally, I think it's because they want to see the state as unique. They just want their will forced on others, or they just don't think about it at all. Well, but it seems they look at the state as different.
Well, because when the Progressive era started, before that, people were, pretty much dependent upon themselves and not, when the Progressive era started, then they started socializing everything, and the state starts taking care of you and all these social agendas, and then people don't think about it. They just,
that's just the way it's
on the
always been.
surface, they're like, well, how could things exist without that? Because they never lived in a world that it didn't exist.
Right.
So, I mean, sure, the Soviets,
when
it collapsed, they wanted to know where the bread was going to come from because they didn't have government bread anymore, or toilet paper. So
government bread.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure it was really good.
That artisan Soviet sourdough.
Just like their cars.
Maybe, and the Ukrainians were just rejoicing because maybe they'd have bread again.
Yeah, right. People just don't get it. And I don't know how to get. I don't know what has to happen before people care enough. And that's the issue I have is that there's so many bad things yet. I mean, nobody's beating down the door to talk about what the problems are. It's like they don't exist. And I get people are absorbed in their own lives, and most of their life is just I need to get it paid to pay my bills.
Right.
And that's what they're focused on.
And they don't question how anything could be any different.
That's the foolishness of the whole. You have to check your legislators and control them so that they abide by the Constitution and all that kind of stuff. Well, people have lives. They don't have you can't make a monster that I have to take care of when I have a job that I have to work every day.
That's a good point.
They count on that too. They count on. They even set Lexington County Council sets their meetings early in the middle of the day when most people who are productive have jobs and are working. Mm-hmm. To even go in and say anything to them, you've got to take time off of work if you have a job. I mean, so they count on that. They want it that way. They want you to not be able to affect the system because they're already bought and paid for by some developer or some other, corporate bigwigs that they're bought and paid for. I mean, so they don't want the people to come in and affect anything. They just want you to go to the polls and consent every time there's a vote. Mm-hmm. That's it. And then they want you to go back to sleep and let them do whatever the heck they want to do.
And most people don't even know what the Constitution is or how the government works, alone keep track of legislators and how they vote, because they don't even know what legislators are. Well, they can't even name the senators and congressmen around them. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
The other thing that drives me crazy is the obsession with the federal aspect, with the federal level of things, and they just completely ignore the local level, while those people are treading all over you.
Yeah.
I mean, those people are some of the worst offenders there are. They're raising gas tax, they're raising property tax every time they turn around. We were talking about
like people only pay attention to the presidential elections.
Right. But when there's so much more that has more of an effect on you.
I think we have David on the line. David, how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you guys doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, I noticed you guys didn't post your show tonight.
Oh, yeah, that would be Corey Norris's fault.
That would be my fault.
See. I mean, that's not why. I mean, I remember because I knew what time you came on.
We appreciate that.
It seems to me that the biggest challenge is that when we're born, we are indoctrinated starting day one.
David, are you using a voice modulator?
No, apparently you have. I wonder if my telephone is messed up because I had the same problem last night.
You sound like a robot.
No, it's new equipment. It's our equipment here. I'm sorry.
That's on our end.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, David, you are. I mean, you think, all right, the public school system, a lot of people feel that it's necessary in order to have the children educated, but it also is an indoctrination tool.
I mean, that's even before school. I mean, like we follow the same pattern, depending on what our society dictates.
Yes, absolutely. Well, if people lived and thought and acted like individuals, the state wouldn't be able to control them. And
your parents have already learned this. So I mean, of course,
they pass it on to you.
Before school, you're already having stuff from your parents that they've been told. I mean, and that goes with religion or anything else. I mean, it's passing something on that's been introduced into society from whichever direction.
It's even taboo to tell your children things. I mean, like if you tell your kids not to trust cops, just as an example, people are going to think there's something wrong with you, that you're a bad person, because
they might even call the government to take your kids away from you.
Right? Yeah.
And then the child's friends at school are going to say, they're going to kind of talk them out of that. Like, your parents are crazy. The kid might end up not even liking you.
What they do, even in preschools now, is they bring in the cops. And they say, look how good they hand out coloring books and all these other
they come in
propaganda
full riot gear.
Yeah, look at how cool we are. Yeah, I saw a thing online I think this week where they had some school in Texas. They had these SWAT team members with their AR-15s.
Yeah.
I mean,
I saw that.
Yeah,
and let's not forget the Pledge of Allegiance. Also, it's like
Exactly.
You know, we don't have a snowball's chance in hell.
No, we don't. We
Not if you keep sending your kids to public school.
Well, not if you keep perpetuating the cycle.
When I went to school, we had a boy in our class that was a Jehovah's Witness, and his parents required that he not pledge to the state, but he felt so bad because he wasn't part of the crowd. And he sat there with his head down, and he felt bad about it. That I don't remember anybody saying anything to him, but it's just that's social pressure that shouldn't be there. You shouldn't be forcing people to do things like that against their will.
Exactly. But I wish you guys would post on Facebook. That way we can at least follow you that way also.
We will, David.
Thanks for calling. Thanks for calling us.
All right, y'all have a great day.
You too. All right, guys, you're listening to The Principle on 95.9 FM. The Point. We'll be right back after this break.
Working man in radio. Kevin Cohen is doing mornings and afternoons on The Point.
Since 1989, The Office Place has been the Midland's premier destination for new and pre-owned office furniture. The Office Place is a full-service dealership, providing layout, design, installation, and service after the sale. So, if you're in the market for office furniture, look them up at officeplace.net. Give them a call at 803-799-3375 or head over to 301C Greystone Boulevard here in Columbia, South Carolina.
Individuals and
1470 AM. If you want to call in and talk with us, our number is 803-799-TALK, 803-799-8255 if you want to join the discussion. And we just had a ghost caller. We just had a guy who wanted to call in and say that he liked the show and that he didn't want to talk, but he wanted to give us a topic. So it's about something to do with the...
And we need our producer to fill us in a little bit.
Yeah, guys, this is our producer, Drew. If you're a regular listener to The Point, you know Drew. He's on a few shows. So, Drew, take it away and tell us what this guy wants to fill us in on.
Hey, everybody. Well, the caller just happened to be listening to the previous show, and John Adams, his show is entirely focused on the city of Columbia, and one of the issues in question was the situation of our water department, the funds that are used to control its infrastructure, and specifically how the government seems to be taking money specifically earmarked for the water and using it for pretty much whatever they want. And I guess the caller was wondering, what do you guys think about that?
Where to begin?
Yeah, there's a lot there.
I have the answer.
Well, before we get into it, I'd like to thank our ghost caller for calling in and giving us this topic.
There you go.
The answer is the government shouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's it. That's not simple. I mean, you're concentrating power in people's hand. So, all right. Here's the thing.
Before we get into it, I think what he's referring to, this is something I've heard a lot of people talking about recently. I think it's some kind of new thing, but there's been so much money taken out of this fund that we now owe money to... the city of Columbia and its governing bodies now owes money to...
And they should have
somebody.
To pay.
Right. But
the people who took the money should have to pay.
Yeah, but it was like a mayor from like 10 years ago. And
then he's still around.
Yeah.
Right, but he's got this liability shield, and he's not really held accountable for any of his actions, and like he can steal people.
It's funny how that works.
So here's the thing. We've talked about this before on the show. People say, there are a lot of people out there that think that people are bad and that we need the state to protect us from these bad people. Well, what happens if that is the case? The worst among us who
seek power,
they want to control people, and you end up with nothing but corrupt people in the state that then take money that they shouldn't be taking and do things that they shouldn't be doing.
Right. It really reminds me of Lord of the Rings. The Ring of Power. The Ring of Power, like when you put it on your finger, you just get like all evil, and it brings out the worst in you and things like that.
It reminds me of Sith Maul or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
They all end up all crinkled up, and
it seems to be a running theme in sci-fi fantasy.
Well, first of all, I would say that people should be able to get water wherever they want to. It's their property. They should be able to have a well or anything else.
You can't.
Well, I know they can't, but I'm saying that's one answer.
Do you know? I don't know if our callers, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I don't know if our listeners know that in the state of South Carolina, if there is municipal water available, it is illegal for you to plumb a well into your home. You can drill a well and use it for irrigation, but if there is municipal water available, it is illegal for you to use it for your home.
What's the state-sponsored reason for that?
You got me. I mean,
they don't even give you
I
one.
don't have craniorectal inversion enough to understand. I really
probably to make
They
sure
just
they
wanna
get enough
control you.
money.
Obviously, yeah,
the social
that's what I would
contract.
say.
In order to make water affordable for everyone, they have to have enough people on it, or some garbage. I don't know.
Social contract, right?
But why should water be any different than cable or anything else? Why should there be a monopoly on it? I mean, why should I be able to
There's a monopoly on cable.
Well, I mean, as far as you can get a few different ones.
There's a monopoly
yes.
on power.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all a state-imposed monopoly. And you have just
my point is
you have just as much corruption with, like, SCE&G. They're putting in this new nuclear facility because it's supposed to make our power bill go down. Meanwhile, they're raising our power bill to cover the rising cost of building the nuclear facility.
They're raising the water bill too.
And it's a fascist corporation. I mean, and it's absolute power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
And people care. Like, people are angry about it. They don't like this. They say, "Oh, this is wrong," and that's about as far as it goes. You know what I mean? They say,
well, because what can you do about it?
right? They'll exactly. They'll walk up to me and strike up a conversation, start complaining about it, and then we say, "Okay, have a nice day, man," and then that's it. And they just go
Because
back
what
home.
can
They
you
eat
do
their
about
dinner.
it?
Yeah, nothing.
I mean, here's the thing.
Just pay her.
There are people out there
I
that
guess.
say, well, if you want to change something, you need to run for office. All right, listen. listen. I have something productive to do. You know, I need to make a
Right.
living. Why should I have to take my time away from something that is actually productive, that makes a decent living, to go run for office just to be left alone?
Right.
Right, to fight for your own freedom.
Just because I want to put a well in my yard and run it into my home. I've got to go expend, countless. I've run for office,
Yeah. What office did you run for?
county council.
Okay.
I
Back
didn't,
in your not as sane days.
right, exactly, my slightly off kilter days. So the amount of time you have to invest, and the amount of your own money and fundraising, and it's ridiculous. I mean, it takes time away from so much. You can't do anything else.
Plus, you're running against corrupt powers that are
so
big money
entrenched.
behind them and everything else.
Yeah, the Lexington County is bought and paid for by developers. I mean, it bought and paid for by the developer, and really horrible developers too. I mean, somehow I'm supposed to justify taking my time away from productive means. You know, something that's actually productive, like sitting on the couch and staring at a television, is more productive than going and trying to affect this entrenched, corrupt, bought and paid for, controlled system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's like I've seen a picture of this vegetarian says, well, then I'm just going to go to the slaughterhouse and get a job, and I'm going to try to fix the system from the inside.
Yeah.
So everybody shut down the meat house so everybody be vegetarians.
What I say to a lot of these warmongers is, if you don't like ISIS, you should join them and change it from the inside.
There you go.
I mean, it makes as much sense.
Have them vote to quit terrorists.
You should convert to Islam.
Yeah, first
so that you can
Islam.
change Sharia law.
Right.
Right. There you go.
Like it's that what?
That's the same logic.
This is the exact same logic. Meanwhile, I just want to put in a well and run it into my home and not be fined, extorted money over it if I'm caught. It's an insane way. So then you end up in these situations where you have, like, the city of Columbia, who is using the water fund as a slush fund for strippers and blow or whatever they're doing, right?
Right.
And we're all supposed to figure out how to solve this problem.
We got to pay for it, though.
No, yeah,
Yeah, we got to hire an investigative team, and it's somehow
we have to have a round table discussion.
We are the government. So
I tell you what. Why don't we just all go with whatever, pitchforks, torches, whatever, go to these people's houses and confiscate their property.
Right.
And auction it off.
Yeah.
To raise the money to pay back what they stole, because that's what they would do to us. That's what people don't understand is if they wouldn't use pitchforks and torches. They would use people with guns to come to our homes to take our stuff.
What you're missing, Corey, is they stole it for your own good.
Yes, it was for my own good. Yep.
So,
and you did agree to a contract.
Yeah, the social contract.
Right.
That I never agreed to. I've never seen.
Right.
Never signed.
It starts at conception.
It was because my mother birthed me in this general area. So obviously I should be subject to whatever mess they want to. It's a completely insane idea, and it's the antithesis of anything that could be remotely considered civilized. Once you look at it,
Mm-hmm.
once you see the way I've always heard it said, and I love the way it said, the gun in the room. Listen, I'm a huge gun fan. I'm a big fan of guns for defense, but not the gun in the room that's used to steal and extort money and control and abduct people and make them comply. It drives me crazy how they, gun control people. They want to take guns from people who aren't harming anyone and let the people who are harming people keep them. The police and the state, agents of the state, who are out actively killing people.
Yeah. To get back to the water issue.
There you go. Yeah. How do we?
There's a city, and I'm blanking right now, in Georgia that wanted to break away from an incorporated Atlanta, but they didn't have any structure set up. So what they did was they outsourced everything except the police. They've saved money. They're more efficient. They've been able to pave roads that were never paved before. They've built parks. The trash service is much better. You don't have to raise taxes because everything just works smoothly. And why people won't even bring up this idea, I don't understand.
All right, guys, you're listening to The Principle on The Point on 95.9 FM, 1470 AM. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Well, that was quick.
It's more about the whole concept in general, that I live here on justly acquired property. I haven't stolen it from anyone. I didn't choose. I mean, I do live in a different town than I was born in, but I didn't choose to be born in the United States. I didn't choose to be born in South Carolina. I just was. And the idea that in order to avoid extortion, in order to avoid violence being initiated against me when I've harmed no one, I'm the one who has to pack up and leave my justly acquired property and go find somewhere else to reside in order to avoid. That's like saying, it's like being in 1780s colonial, 1780s America, and saying, well, if you don't like slavery, you should leave. It's insane. It's an insane idea that in order to avoid being aggressed against by agents of the state when you've harmed no one, that you must flee.
Well, that's the break. Well, that's what we'll be talking about, guys. We're going to be right back after this break. You're listening to The Principle on The Point.
FM and 1470 AM.
All right, guys, we're back. You're listening to The Principle on 95.9 The Point, 95.9 FM, 1470 AM.
Back in the jungle.
Yeah, I specifically requested that we didn't play this song because I don't like Guns N' Roses. But if you like Guns N' Roses, you can thank Corey for that little snippet.
Axl Rose is a
what?
A He-Man.
I was trying to think of a word I could say on the radio. Yeah,
He's a character, that's for sure.
Sphincter.
So we're talking about the if you don't like it, you can leave argument. Where did we leave off?
Well, I mean, we were just saying.
I was just going to mention that the people I usually get that from are usually so-called air bracket conservatives that are, I'll be arguing for freedom, and then they'll be arguing back that, well, if you don't like the laws or whatever, that I should leave. Until it's funny,
the irrelevant Constitution.
Unless it's Obamacare, then all of a sudden they don't have to leave to complain about that.
Right.
So, well, if that's the law now, so if you don't like that, you can leave.
Right. It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah, they like one way. Oh, but I can complain about. Well, you can't complain about that now. You're gonna have to.
The one I always like is, why don't you move to Somalia? It's an anarchist paradise. Like, actually, no, it's not. There is there is a state there. It might not be all that effective, but why? This is just the way things are done on Earth. If you don't like it, you should colonize the moon.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's complete and utter insanity. How about I just stay right here, and you people leave me the heck alone?
How about we don't invent anything new and try to move forward in society and to a better society and less police violence and less insane laws? Let's not do that. Let's just keep promoting this insanity that we're living in.
Why does it make me like a utopian theorist if I think that we can have a civil society without relying on theft and violence to keep it going, you know?
Because you, in order to have that, you got to believe that people are inherently good and that bad people aren't going to murder you on the street for looking at them wrong. That's really what it comes down to.
It does. It comes down to two philosophies.
It's bad people out there that you need to be protected from them, so we're going to create this thing that has a monopoly on using violence against people.
You just went to a water park, right? Corey?
Just now?
No, one of our coaches.
You just went to a water park in your mind.
That was a odd transition.
That was just come out of nowhere. In your mind, you just went to a water park.
I'm actually on a beach right now.
That's where I like
drinking
to stay.
Coronas, senoritas.
But did they have the armed bodyguards there to make sure no one was drowning each other? And
yeah, they had guys with full body armor and AR-15s walking around.
Yeah, the flame
making sure that people weren't killing each other in the water park.
Yeah. Okay, well, good.
But it does come down to two mindsets, and the mindsets that some people think that most people are good, and you just need some laws to deal with people that aggress against others. And some people think that everybody's bad, and if you didn't have a police on every corner, that people will be killing each other. Yeah, and I just do not. I know that for a fact that people are not inherently evil.
If the state dissolved tomorrow, would there be people that did something wrong? Yeah, but that's not because they're inherently bad. It's because they are conditioned by the presence of the state. And they are not conditioned to be moral people on their own. They're conditioned to look at what's right and what's legal and illegal, not what's right and wrong.
They don't respect property because they have no control of property or understand.
Yeah, they've never had any. They've never owned property. No one's ever respected their property.
If you get a job,
the state hasn't.
If you get a job, they're going to take half your money in taxes. They own your money because they take it before you even get your check.
So if there would be chaos in the absence of the state, it would be because of the state. That's what people don't seem to understand. All we know is theft and violence, initiation of violence. I mean, that's all we know. That's from birth to death nowadays. That's all we know is theft and violence. So you're conditioned to believe that theft is okay and that murdering people because they are holding a screwdriver is okay. What do you expect? What do you expect from a society that is told that and shown that over and over and over again? Mm-hmm. And listen, I'm not talking about there's violence on TV, so people. I'm not talking about it at all. I'm talking about the state. I'm talking about the state.
Like the reality.
The reality, the real violence that the state commits every single day.
The real theft that happens every single paycheck.
Every single day, every single paycheck, every time you go to the gas pump, every time you fart in public. I mean, it's just insanity. And we are conditioned to see that as okay. What do you expect from a group of people who is told over and over and over and over and shown over and over and over again that theft is okay and violence to achieve your desired results is also okay?
It's always for the greater good, right?
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
if you apply that to yourself, I mean, you can do all sorts of things.
What scares me is not only it's just the United States itself. As far as states go, as far as the violence and the laws, I mean, are way more violent than Europe. I mean, you have a year where maybe 5 people in all of Germany are killed by the police, if any.
I think there's been one this year.
Yeah, and last year there was almost 1,500 in the United States.
That's the ones that were reported.
Yeah, and they don't actually keep official records on that.
No, they don't.
To get these kind of numbers,
it's a voluntary reporting.
Yeah, we have to rely on press and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be more than that. It could be more than that. But
So what do you expect from that group of
1,500
people?
that we know of.
What do you
Right.
expect? What do you expect from that group of people?
And if you go to the killedbypolice.com website, you will actually they'll have the stories to each one. Yeah. They'll have a link to each article, and I'd say at least half of them they'll have all the questions about what happened. You know, it's not blatant. There's a guy running out of a bank with a gun. It's always like, well, they felt threatened because he had something that thought they looked like a gun.
Yeah,
and
but he had a piece of tinfoil they thought was a gun.
it's just
A
ridiculous.
Pop-Tart shoot into the shape of a gun.
Yes, his fingers were shaped like a gun, and so what they did is felt threatened him to death.
Yeah, it's the whole old Monty Python movie. The joke of violence inherent in the system. But I mean, it just is. I mean, it just.
So, what do you expect from that group of people? I mean, if just what you. Now, here's the thing. To go back to what we were talking about, if you don't like it, you can leave. You're telling me. I just don't want to be aggressed against when I have harmed no one. I expect you to aggress against me if I have harmed or am trying to harm someone. I expect that. That's self-defense. Please do that. But when I have harmed no one, I'm just minding my own business. I don't want to be aggressed against, period. And you're telling me that because I don't want that, I should pack up and move to some other place that may or may not exist. And that's civilized.
Yeah, I think we shot a hole through that whole slogan.
But to me, it's worth repeating because I hear it so frequently.
I think it is worth repeating. It's people seem to get on their high horse when they say that.
Yes.
It's like the end all be all argument. Well, you know what?
This is a republic.
I think it's their last resort when they don't have anything they don't have any argument.
Yeah, and they're like, oh yeah, I can just tell them to leave. I can tell them just go away.
Right,
because
right.
it's making me mad.
Right.
But it's sad that just to want to be able to live peacefully and not be stolen from or harassed by certain individuals who will get away with it. You know,
absolutely.
Like the police are paid to harass you, and what's more is you pay them to harass you.
They're paid with your money to harass you.
Yeah, the money that was stolen from you is then used to harass you. It's pretty sad, but and to think that that's wrong and to want that to change is wrong, and you should just go away. You should just like they're saying, let me stay here and be extorted and enslaved and imprisoned and harassed and aggressed against, and you can go somewhere and
Well, it's because the only thing that, like we were saying, the only thing that they see as a way of conducting a society is through violence. Mm-hmm. And that's civilized.
My dad spanked me and I turned out just fine.
Right.
Yeah, that's another one you hear a lot. Yeah.
Yep. I think it's if you're out there listening and you see this gun in the room, if you see this that the state is nothing but a violent entity. I think I've said it before on the show, Mao, who said that, all laws are enforced through the barrel of a gun or something to that effect. It's true. And if you can see that, and if you admit that, then I think you need to always point that out to everyone over and over and over and over again, because
I've heard it described as the only language the state understands.
Violence is it. That's it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's people, the whole idea that in the absence of the state, there will be chaos and killing and whatever. That's all conjecture. The violence of the state is guaranteed. It's proven. More people have been killed by the state than the plague, than
firebombing,
Christianity,
nuclear
Islam. There have been more people killed by the state than there have been people killed by Islamic terrorists or what.
But we only kill the brown people.
Right,
so
that's it. That's okay. As long as they have oil in their brown, it's okay. Kill them.
Right.
But the point is that more people have been killed by states than any other entity, and yet somehow this escapes people, and this is just the way it is. Because if we don't kill them first, they're gonna kill us.
Because it all goes back to a pack mentality.
Yes.
And they
collectivism.
Whenever you do that, you make the other people not human.
Yeah, you got to dehumanize them.
Yeah, you're making them into them people,
them vermin,
and they're not human. They're subhuman. They're, it doesn't matter if you kill them because they're animals.
Those who would make
that was Chris. That was what Chris Kyle said, but they were just animals, so it was okay to kill them.
Right.
Even though he was killing children and women.
People with whole lives.
Yeah.
Like everybody.
Because they're different, they're uncivilized. Yeah.
Right.
Uncultured.
Yeah,
They weren't.
amazing.
Yeah,
They wore different clothes.
Yes.
Those savages.
True.
And the only reason they were is because they've been bombed for 60 years.
The CIA's been over there meddling for generations.
This guy's been making their clothes. All right, guys, you're listening to The Principle on 95.9 The Point. If you want to call in, the number's 803-799-TALK. Stick around. We'll be right back. Bluegrass in there for you guys. All right, you're listening to The Principle on 95.9 FM, 1470 AM. This is The Point. Corey, your mic is...
Now
there we go. Okay.
There it goes. I was over here saying all kinds of things. You just didn't hear me. The FCC was at work in there a second.
If you guys want to call in and join the discussion, the number is 803-799-TALK. That's 803-799-8255 if you want to jump in on this. And we're talking about
free for all.
Are we still with if you don't like it?
I wanted to talk about somebody I had a discussion with on Facebook about.
Gosh,
here we go.
Guy that's involved in the Black Lives Matter thing with the police and
hashtag Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, and I started talking to him. I was like, "Well, what's your agenda? I mean, what are you trying to do?" And they've really. Like, I don't know. was the retort I got? It was we want equality. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, we want to be treated this. What do you mean? Well, how are you going to legislate that, or what are you trying to get done? So you're protesting to protest. You're not really trying to accomplish anything. It's just you don't like what's going on. Well, it's kind of a waste of energy if you don't really have a point to make as far as in what direction you want to go to solve anything. And he said, well, I said it's racist on its front that Black Lives Matter when you should be saying lives matter. That basically it's like, well, that's not part of our criteria. I'm like, well, it should be.
It's not part of demographics or something.
Yeah, it's not part of our demographic to be talking about that. It should be, because when you start talking about Black Lives Matter, then you're segregating everything.
Preferential treatment. It's racism.
And you're segregating everything to where your focus is on the wrong thing. You're not talking about lives matter and what the problem is that people are getting killed. That's
where it is for me. If you just when you start getting into and of course, I mean, in this country, it's no secret that there is a lot of racial tension here. But I
thought that this president was supposed to stop all that. It seems like it's gotten worse.
I feel like some people may have voted for him in good graces, or just because they thought that it was supposed to be the end all be all cure for racism. I don't know, but I feel like people are just wasting their time when they take issues like this, like police brutality, and then break it down into just black and white, like white police and black victims. And don't get me wrong, I understand that is often the case. That is most often the case.
There have been plenty
but it's all wrong.
Other races killed. I mean, Jose Guarena. Do you know about Jose Guarena?
I mean, I see where these people are coming from, because it is almost. I mean, it's most of it is a white police officer and a black. But when you start breaking it down like that, you just get people fighting with each other,
right?
About race, because it's such a sensitive
divide
topic.
And conquer is what it is.
Exactly. And so I think if we could focus on police brutality as a whole, then that would be a lot more effective to kind of shed some light on the.
Yeah, but and how do you reduce that?
It's what we're seeing. I think
that's the thing, is they don't ask why and how.
Right. What we're seeing is a reflection of the system and not a reflection of race relations.
They don't ask why it is that cops, period, black or white cops, can just kill black people with impunity. Like, why is that?
Right.
I mean, what? Well, because the power of the state, because they investigated themselves and they found that they did no wrongdoing. I mean, listen, even if you don't want to argue in favor of the absence of the state, Can you at least not see that police investigating themselves is not a good idea? Can you at least concede that maybe there should be some third party, unbiased, investigatory agency?
No,
criminals should be allowed to investigate themselves too. Then, right?
Right. Exactly.
No.
Yeah, I investigated myself. Sorry, officer, you pulled me for what? Speeding? Oh, yeah, I investigated myself and saw that I was not speeding. Right. Have a nice day.
See, well, Corey, I think that law and legal procedures and right versus wrong in a court of law is a really sensitive and very difficult subject that just the average civilian can't handle. That's why we need the state to investigate itself, because because citizens are stupid,
right.
And we need the people who are most qualified and most powerful to make sure that they aren't doing any wrong themselves. I think somebody voted for them, and
or
then
maybe they have a piece of paper that says that they went to school or something.
Something
because
like
that shows you know something, just like having a driver's license shows you know how to drive.
Yeah, well, yeah,
right, yeah.
So you put in time anyway.
Right, yeah, you did the time
and money.
You did the time. That's the thing is, that's another. I don't want to go too far on a tangent, but we are all conditioned to think that because someone has a slip of paper, or because someone has a license, because that means that they know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And it removes the need for you to actually assess whether or not they know what they're doing.
Right. It's just like if it's a law, then it has to be a just law. It's what,
right.
That's,
right.
That's
so why question it? Yeah.
Right.
So because they're police and that what they do is investigation work, then I'm supposed to trust that what they say is right, so I don't really need to even look and assess for myself. And that's what they want. They want unthinking automatons. They want people who don't question things, who don't say...
It's not was it right or wrong, it's was it legal? Like, no matter what happened. Like with the Eric Garner thing, was it a legal chokehold? That kind of thing.
Yeah, was it against policy?
Right. Yeah, they talk about all kind of silly side arguments that have nothing to do with... Why is somebody messing with a man selling his own property?
Right.
Well, that never even enters their mind.
A lot of those same people will say we're a nation of laws, and if you don't like it, you should let the court sort it out. Well, Eric Garner didn't seem to get a chance to let the court sort it out.
Yeah.
I didn't know we had Judge Dredd walking around now that just execute people on the spot and say, well, it was justified.
That's basically what.
If you don't like it, don't break the law.
Yeah.
And somebody said he was maybe in front of a store, and the store called. Well, that's still. If you'd ask somebody to move along that you're trespassing or something, that wouldn't ended up with a chokehold killing somebody. I mean, that is just not what happens.
This is why the store should just handle it itself. This is why people should stop calling the cops for things like this, unless there's been a serious crime and you really think that you don't own any weapons and you think that somebody with a gun needs to be here. And then I could see why you would like to call the police. But if it's just
there's no point in calling them then either. They're going to show up once it's too late.
Yeah.
I mean, if you feel really compelled to have someone come ask you a bunch of questions and do a bunch of paperwork, call the police.
Yeah.
True. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to, because that's what. But then they track down the. In really heinous crimes, yeah. But in your average, everyday, somebody stole my trailer, they don't care.
I'm seeing a lot more on Facebook. I'm seeing a lot more private, personal investigation. People will say, my camera got a picture of this car stealing my trailer. They'll put the picture on Facebook. If you see this car, let me know, and things like that. And it's sad that just a guy on his smartphone can get better results than an entire police agency.
That's the way you fix things.
That's a decentralized society. That's the way it should
like the internet.
I think it's great. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know someone who lived in a neighborhood that had a bunch of stuff stolen, and the neighborhood had set up a camera at the entrance of the neighborhood, and the only reason they caught them was because they had video footage of license plates. So isn't that kind of what we should do?
Right.
I mean, because the cops aren't going to do that. They're not going to investigate it and find that. If they happen upon them because they were driving without a tag or some ridiculous whatever, didn't have a seatbelt on, they might find them. But stop calling the police for stuff. I mean, we should.
I think it makes people have less and less responsibility for their own lives.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And I think that, and you've made this point before. When people get less and less self-reliant and more dependent on the state, I mean, it's just a slippery slope.
And they become victimized more and more and more, and then they wonder why they've been victimized. Well, because you have no sense of self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
Your whole existence depends on the state nannying you and fathering you.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, you're listening to The Principle on 95.9 The Point. If you want to call in and join the discussion, the number's 803-799-8255. We can get you on the line. We're coming back for one more second.
Man and Radio.
All right, we had to get just a little more Beastie Boys in there for you. You're listening to The Principle on 95.9 The Point, 95.9 FM, 1470 AM. If you want to join the discussion, give us a call at 803-799-TALK. That's 803-799-8255. This is our last section. This one kind of flew by.
I think they call them segments.
Segments. Excuse me, Corey. Thank you. So where were we, guys?
The violence of the state and how people are conditioned to accept it,
and
not question
defend
it, and defend it, and tell you that if you don't like it, you can leave, and tell you it's based on.
And we just want equality of everybody being beaten the same.
Yes, right.
I think everyone should be beaten to the exact same extent.
As long as there's many white people going to jail or getting beaten,
we
then
need
it's
more
okay.
white people shot by police.
Let's not stop the beating. Let's just make sure it's equal.
I think we need more black officers shooting white people to kind of even.
That would make it equal.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
That's we should get a petition for that.
The beatings will continue.
Let's protest that.
The beatings will continue until morale improves.
Yeah.
That's what it comes. So that's an insane concept. It's frustrating because people don't think past the tip of their nose on a regular basis. They don't even consider the Black Lives Matter. Well, yeah, okay, they do. So do white lives. So do Asian lives. So do. I mean, the problem is that the state is a violent entity and they are immune from prosecution. I mean, in essence.
Let's get back to the crazy concept of it's my property and somebody doesn't have the right to make edicts over my property. So, I mean, most of these crimes that so-called that they're stating aren't really crimes. So if you've abolished half the crimes, you're going to get a lot less violence. Well,
they don't have the right to make edicts and laws governing your property unless they're wearing a magic costume.
Yeah.
Then they have the right, and you don't have the right to defend yourself against them if they are. That's the thing that gets me is that people will say that you have the right to defend yourself unless it's an agent of the state that you're defending yourself against.
It just kills me that people they embrace the Second Amendment. It's my property. You can't take my gun. But that's the only thing.
Unless you're wearing a magic costume and you ask nicely.
And that's the only thing they focus on.
Yeah.
And I think that's because the talking heads focus on that. But that's, you can take away their house. You can take away their car. You can take away anything else. You can take away their children. And everybody just looks the other way.
Yeah, come take my kids, but don't take my guns.
Yeah, basically what it amounts to. It's the most insane thing I've ever. I don't get it. I really don't.
I've seen this thing circulating on the internet that's something about how Al Sharpton owes some millions of dollars in tax money, but they took all of everything Willie Nelson owned for $1 million, owing $1 million or something. And the implication is that they should take it from Al Sharpton too.
Yeah.
Actually, no, they should not take it from anyone. Like that's but that's what people want. I mean,
I saw this neocon meme about how the punishment for illegal immigration in North Korea is like 15 years in prison, and the punishment for illegal immigration in Iraq is like the death penalty, and the punishment in America like nothing. You get a free ride. Like, what do you want to be more like that?
Yeah,
do you want to be more like North Korea and Iraq?
Yes, you want to model yourself after the worst fascist regimes in the world. That
exactly. Why are we constantly comparing ourselves to North Korea?
We're not.
Because those are nations of law.
It's like the last country that America's better than.
Republics of law that we should follow.
People vote in those countries. You didn't know that?
Yeah, they vote for one
Kim Jong-un.
Kim Jong-un, yeah.
So they want people executed on the border.
Right.
They don't want the South Koreans taking their job.
They really do. They want
South Koreans will take their job in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, the South Koreans will take all those North Korean jobs.
They want armed guards executing anyone that comes over the border on site.
Yeah,
they're happy with that.
It's insane. To me, I don't. Call me crazy,
Crazy.
I just don't believe in imaginary lines.
That's insane.
That has no contract that supports it. I mean, the southern border, the northern border, that's all an imaginary line. There is no contract that.
See, I agree with the imaginary lines because I really get off on the idea of murdering anyone who crosses them.
Oh yeah,
it makes me happy.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I think that they should all be murdered.
But seriously,
we should have roving bands of slaughter people.
I think we should just have minefields like 500 yards in and out of the border.
I think that I think
and
that
we shouldn't put signs up.
I think we're being way too tolerant by allowing them to be shot. I think they should rove the border with machetes.
Yes.
They should hack off limbs.
Yes.
The thing is, we're being sarcastic, but how many people have you actually heard said they would volunteer to go kill people?
Mm-hmm. Right.
To kill innocent people.
Because
they're not really innocent because they're illegal.
I've heard of this line. I got to kill you now.
Yeah. I know where this imaginary line is, and you ain't crossing it. Over my dead body. But you're supporting But the funny thing is a lot of those same people are I don't like big government. Really, you don't?
Yeah, right.
But they want to shoot somebody because of nation-state propaganda.
Right. On behalf, they want to kill people on behalf of big government, but they don't like big government.
They're not killing anybody coming over the Georgia-Florida state line.
My propaganda posters are red, white, and blue. That's the difference.
Yeah.
That's the difference between a red propaganda poster and a red, white, and blue propaganda poster.
I actually had somebody in the upstate physically threaten me. I swear to God, over immigration issue because I was opposed to it and spoke against. I spoke against some legislation surrounding it. I spoke in I think it was a House committee hearing or something, and this person actually physically threatened me. And
what did he say?
That he didn't like the fact that I was working against what he was trying to do, and we can take this outside. Okay, yeah, we can. Yeah. That's fine with me. Lay a hand on me, and that's all there is to it. I hope you're bulletproof. Yeah. But that's the way they think. Is that you're ruining the country?
Yeah.
Really? I'm ruining the country.
Yeah, I'm the one.
Because I'm ruining the country because I don't want to murder people for crossing imaginary lines.
Right.
Or I actually want a free market and labor.
I want a free market. I want a real free market. I want
I want to collect rainwater.
Right, on my own property. I want less state intervention in our lives. And I'm sorry, you cannot have strict borders without having more state involvement in your everyday life. There's no way around it. That's how you end up with the papers, please kind of thing. You have to always have your papers with you.
Yeah. And nobody realizes that
But they're plastic.
Nobody realizes that the border enforcement coincided with the progressive era.
I know.
The Mexican border was never
an issue until the progressive era came in. And
right.
Yeah, and they don't. But you're talking about the same people that don't realize that you can't. That they're arguing in favor of small government on one hand, but strong borders on the other hand. Like that doesn't. Those two things can't coexist.
And then tougher laws on the other hand, tougher punishment, more jail time for
mandatory minimums and but I don't like the government
and lower taxes.
Yeah, lower taxes too.
Expand the government and lower the taxes. That works good.
It's utter insanity, and I can't. I hate how people can't think past the tip of their nose, but they can't. Maybe it's the public schools.
People just kind of subscribe to whatever they're being told and whatever they
I don't think they think. It's more of just repetition than it is thinking.
Yeah.
It's just repeating whatever Rush Limbaugh says or
Glenn Beck
or whatever.
I've always wondered where these things come from. Like all these talking heads, they say the exact same thing. You know what I mean? So who's behind the scenes saying, okay, every single talking head? This
I think they kind of listen to each other, and they get it from news stories, and they just kind of. Sometimes they'll have the same story on
that's a good argument.
Y'all remember the thing with the Malaysian airline crash out in San Francisco, and the reporter on the air was reading out the names of the pilots. And it was
low.
We too low. Boom ding out. That's where it comes from. Is they get a sheet from the propaganda wing of the state, or whoever else, and they don't even think about it. They just sit there and read it.
Yeah.
They don't even consider what they're even saying. That's where it comes from. The unthinking talking heads. I mean, Bill O'Reilly.
And then the viewers do the exact same thing.
They all work from the same sheet of music, and that's the thing. Well, I can't stand Rachel Maddow, but that Bill O'Reilly's good. Really, they're both statists.
Right.
They both want you to be less free.
They both want the expansion of government, more government control.
More state control.
You're not a conservative. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. So, which one? So you just want your flavor of statism,
right?
I just want to be left the heck alone.
It's two flavors of radical progressivism.
That's it. That's all it is. Everything is one flavor, another progressive.
Why can't people just try to be happy, be free, and and just live in a
leave people alone?
Yeah, and just be happy.
Well, I guess it's time to roll out, guys. You've been listening to The Principle on 95.9 FM, 1470 AM. We'll be back next Sunday night at 8 p.m.